Alright guys, and welcome back to another creepy episode on the channel. This week we have another possession sort of demonic case to talk about, but it's kind of one that's gone under the radar, but it's super scary.
So this is a case about Michael Taylor. He lived in West Yorkshire with his family in 1974, and he lived with his wife Christine, 5 children and a poodle. And he was considered a really nice guy, like he was a loving father and husband, and everyone said that they'd always hear like laughter coming out of the house whenever they walked past. They were such like a happy, nice family.
This family weren't in particular religious, but this lady called Barbara introduced him to this sort of like church group, and this is basically when things started to take a bit of a turn and get a bit strange, because at the church he met this 21-year-old girl called Marie. They started hanging out a lot more than sort of like a married man should do, really. And this is when things started to take a bit of a dark twist. So basically one of the weird things they would actually do is they would meet up and literally step all night and just basically do the sign of the cross. It was, yeah, which is a bit strange in itself, but I think it was basically they were trying to ward off evil, and why they were trying to ward off evil I don't really know.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the sort of start of where like things start, like dark presences start to get into this guy's life.
So on top of all of this strange behaviour, he actually changed as a person. He became very like sullen and irritable towards his family, like he'd snap at them and get angry all the time, and it's just not the dad or husband that they knew. So after a while, Michael's wife Christine had had enough, and she went to one of the congregations that they were having and basically just accused him of being unfaithful. And then Michael kind of had this bizarre evil influence take over him, and he became really verbally and physically abusive towards his wife Christine, and he was actually speaking in tongues. And everyone just was like watching on in fear, and they actually had to restrain him because he was actually being so violent. One of the churchgoers actually described the incident, and they said that they suddenly glanced at Mike and his whole features changed. He looked almost bestial. He kept looking at me and there was a really wild look in his eyes. I started screaming at him out of fear.
So in the end, the church actually did forgive Michael for this sort of situation, and sort of Michael himself approached the church and said that he like honestly thought he was possessed and that he needed an exorcism. So on the 5th of October in 1974 they decided to perform the exorcism, which actually lasted over 8 hours.
So as soon as the exorcism began, Michael began to have convulsions, and he was like biting, scratching and hitting anyone that came close, so he actually had to be tied down. But what makes this so interesting is that he requested the exorcism, so surely if he wasn't possessed he wouldn't react like that because he asked for it. So as Luke said, it lasted for 8 hours, and during this time there was like crucifixes shoved in his mouth, which I don't know why they did that, but and he was like doused in holy water and he had to confess his sins, but all the while he was like growling at anyone that came near him.
So over the span of this 8-hour exorcism, there was apparently over 40 demons within Michael. And just to name 2 of them, it was like incest and bestiality. So at this point, they had been going for 8 hours, and Michael and the priests were exhausted, so they had to kind of like take a break and sort of like come back to it another day. But the supposed 3 demons that were left in him were insanity, anger, and murder.
So there was one witness to these exorcisms, and it was one of the priest's wives, and she said she had a vision of when they finished of Michael was going to murder his wife, and she like begged the exorcist to carry on and finish, but they just were too exhausted. But she was literally pleading and begging with them to finish, but they just couldn't.
So this is the point in the story where it gets so sinister and so dark. I mean, bearing in mind they've been going for 8 hours and they paused and there was supposedly 3 demons left in Michael. Now, the exorcism finished at 8 AM, and just a few hours later at 10 AM Michael ended up killing his wife and his dog. So basically, reportedly, he strangled his wife and he actually like gouged out her eyes and ripped out her tongue, and then after that he sort of like tore apart her face. Like that just sounds like I don't know, next level evil. Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you, I don't know why you would do any of that, but that is just crazy. And he basically did the same to his dog, the poodle, where he basically just like sort of strangled it to death and sort of like tore apart it, didn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's horrible. So after this, Michael was wandering the streets. He was completely naked and just covered, like completely covered in blood. And he was just shouting, like he was walking around aimlessly and shouting, "It's the blood of Satan," like over and over again, which is just, oh, I got chills when I said that. It's so scary.
Yeah.
And the police were just doing a patrol and obviously found him and was like, okay, what was going on? So then he was taken into custody and his poor wife and dog were found just ripped apart in his home.
So obviously this case went to court and Michael pleaded not guilty because he generally believed he was possessed by demonic forces. Taking that into consideration, the court actually deemed him insane and actually put him to a mental asylum for the next 4 years of his life. I mean, only 4 years after killing your wife and dog.
So what's really terrifying about this case is that Michael is now free to roam the world and he's still supposedly got these 3 demons of insanity, anger and murder within him still, and he's just out in the world. So that case is just insane and I'm shocked that I haven't heard about it more often because it's in England where we live and he's still free so hopefully we don't encounter him. But it's just insane. I can't believe that he's free and still supposedly possessed. It's terrifying.
Yeah, and as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch our videos. We appreciate it so much. Thanks for all the support, and we will see you in the next creepy video.